series of representative guests listed on the meeting agenda. The first is for comments regarding agenda items. The second is for topics not on the agenda. Speakers may offer comments related to school operations and programs, but the board did not hear personnel comments concerning any individual associated with the school system. Please address those comments to the appropriate administrator. If you wish to be recognized, please fill out the appropriate form and turn it in to the district clerk as per policy 1514. Public participation at board meetings, public comment by district residents is limited to 15 minutes total, unless the board suspends the limit. Each person is given up to 3 minutes to address the board. Additionally, no more than 3 people may speak on a single topic unless the board also waives the invitation. This is a meeting held in public rather than a public meeting. Which means we will not be engaging in dialogue with members of the community this evening. District personnel will follow up with you regarding your concerns. Rest assured we are listening carefully and take seriously what you have to say. Please demonstrate respect by speaking to the issues, sharing ideas and opinions, but not engaging in personal attacks. The board appreciates your willingness to share your concerns and celebrations. Please be advised that this meeting is being live streamed and recording will be posted on the Iroquois website. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now you can come up for a picture for your parents. This way your parents have a picture so they can remember. Is that okay? Oh, sorry.
See, Keith, so I know what's important, Nora highlights my entire agenda.
Thank you so much.
Everything's highlighted. Okay.
Just to follow up, I just want to thank our 3 students today for doing just a fantastic job of presenting and coming tonight, so thank you very much. Thank you for your continued support of our students and our student leaders. Student Government Board does a fantastic job, not only being leaders of our school community, but also making sure that their student voice is heard, and also for providing our students with great experiences that they can cherish for the rest of their lives. So they ensure that the students at Iroquois really are participating in a lot of great activities and have a lot of great experiences throughout their high school careers. So they do a phenomenal job with that. So we really thank the members of our Student Government Board for what they do to lead our students to make sure that they have great experiences. So thank you very much. We really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for your support of our students and our Student Government Board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. And TJ, are you going to win on Friday?
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
You know, and I appreciate the 3 of you always thanking us for what we do for you. But really, you know, we should thank you because you're the one who would inspire the other students to partake in different activities. And I know sometimes they don't thank you, but I know so many students that come back after they graduate, and what you are doing made memories for them for the rest of their lives. And then when they become parents, they usually try to get their kids to do what you had them do. So thank you for doing that for all the other students. You do make a difference.
You're also going to be the ones that have to organize your class reunions.
Okay, we're going to go to the impact of the New York State budget. I believe that's probably John.
Purpose of this is just to give you a quick 5 to 10 minutes just to kind of talk about things going on at the state level. I'll tell you, kind of give you insight on the state aid process, how that works, to kind of remind you how that works, and different things that could be happening with foundation aid and what to look out for as things unfold in the upcoming months. The process has been in place this basic process has been in place for probably 15, 20 years. And what typically happens is in January, the governor presents the executive budget. That's for all the spending in New York State, for all the programs. They do touch on education, more or less every time in January. Sometimes it's very little, sometimes it's very in-depth. But they allocate something towards education. Then as the February and March go by, then the state, as the Senate and Assembly put their proposals together, and then they kind of do negotiations and things to kind of come to one proposal for New York State. The goal is to have that done by April 1st, because they work on a financial year that's April 1st to March 31st. It's different than the school year. In April, so they hope to have the budget completed by April 1st. They're supposed to by New York State Constitution. But in the last couple of years, they've extended that, and they've gone slightly into April. Last year, actually this past April, it was April 20th when they finally decided and settled on a budget proposal for New York State. So that's been the process in the past. When you hear we talked a lot about foundation aid and hold harmless. The foundation aid formula was put in place around 2006, and immediately, right after that, was the housing crisis in 2008. Funding in New York State was drying up. There was a lot of economic problems. So they never really got that formula funded correctly from the start, basically. So since then, 2008, they've been adding money to it incrementally each year, but they never really funded the formula as they should have. And we were getting consistent increases of maybe between 0 and 4% slowly over the years, but nothing more than that. In 2021, there was a lawsuit against New York State charging that they were not funding the foundation aid. What they said they were going to do with foundation aid formula, they were not doing it correctly, and they weren't. So they then decided that they would, because of this suit against them, fund it correctly. So in 2021, 2022, they did implement that formula to some extent, where anyone who's due money, who was in the past was missing money, they gave them that money. So there's many districts across New York State that received very significant increases of 5, 10, 15%, big increases in single years. But they did not give decreases to some districts like ours that would receive a decrease because of our enrollment, because of income levels, all the different factors that go into foundation aid. We were scheduled to go down. But they put that off and said, we're going to hold those districts harmless. We won't take anybody down. We'll just do a flat increase across the state, minimally for districts like us. And then other districts that we owed money to, we'd give them that money that we owed them. So when she presented her executive budget in January, this is the output report that we got right when that presentation was done. And she proposed to remove hold harmless and to pull back the money from that she felt that we were overfunded with the formula. And I presented that in January, February, March, and when we were doing our budget presentations, we touched on this at that time. The good thing about it was that we weren't the only ones. There was a large number of districts, 45% of the districts in New York State were going to get this pullback. This is how it was calculated. They called it a transition adjustment. They looked at how much foundation aid we were getting versus how much the formula said we should get, $1.2 million, and they said that we'd cut that in half and do it over 2 years, so you wouldn't have to, get a big $1.2 million decrease. You'd have two $600,000 decreases instead. Luckily, through all the negotiation process, we talked with our local representatives. We told them what we were looking for, that was going to be a big problem for us. And at the end, they did not do that decrease, and they decided to hold us harmless again and do no increase in foundation aid for this year we're in right now. So just to give you kind of the history there of where we were, but we still do worry about this, because if they do fully implement that foundation aid formula, this is what could happen to us. The other thing that's important to note also, I guess I'll look at this timeline and remind us that when the state's going through these negotiations and settling on the budget, they're doing it last year, April 20th. That's only 30 days before the public votes on our budget. And that's only 2.5 months before our school year starts. So this information is coming into us very late, and it's very difficult to adjust to these things and kind of guess what's going on there. This is just a reminder, the revenue foundation aid for us, again, we've got those small hold harmless increases. Some years it's 0, some years it's, I think 3.04% was the biggest one we've gotten in the last 6 years. We've averaged 1.53 on the foundation aid. Our levy increase, of course, is controlled by a formula that considers CPI, and that's averaged 2.56. But that inflation rate, I'm using the inflation rate that's used for the tax levy increase formula, and that's averaged 3.72 over the last 6 years. So we've had to do things to kind of make sure we can still operate, and we've done things over the years to reduce costs and do things. But again, if that negative starts coming to us, two meetings ago, Doug shared this 5-year projection that we have. And this is kind of saying, what if in 25, 26, we get that reduction, and we get a second reduction in 26, 27? What will that do to our operations here? And when we're seeing that's going to be a deficit, we're projecting 1.8, and the next year, 3.6. So things that we have to really watch, and what's going on now. Actually, this is just at the state level, they show this formula a lot. This is a flow chart of how foundation aid formula works. You can see it's very complex. You don't need to read everything on there, but there's lots of things that factor into foundation aid. So,
And it led into this nice too.
So when the governor put her budget together for this year, she did allocate $1 million to study the foundation aid formula. So the Rockefeller Institute was given this money to conduct a study to look at foundation aid across New York State. They've done meetings in different committees across New York State. I think superintendents have been involved, school board association.
Yeah, they have come around to us and asked us questions and made comments. One of the, and I shouldn't cross my hands, that's a closed posture, but I kind of feel closed with this, is they say they've been given 6 months to do this. If John goes back to the formula, you can see how complicated the formula is. And they said flat out, they can't do it in 6 months. They can make they will be making recommendations. They flat out said that they are making recommendations, but the governor, the assembly, the Senate do not have to listen to their recommendations, and it will be where it is. And so if the governor is worried about funding and says, here's a place I can save funding and look at enrollment, which is wrong. I don't disagree with the idea of looking at enrollment, but when you look at the formula and you say I'm changing one piece and nothing else and updating one piece and leaving all the rest the same, that's not appropriate. You can't, it's like making dinner. You leave out one ingredient, it's going to taste very different. So I'm not holding out hope for the Rockefeller Institute to do something that'll come around and change enrollment or something where the governor is going. What I do hope is one day, and I was just talking to another superintendent about it, that the citizens of New York will look at their government representatives in New York State, in Albany, and say, what you are doing is wrong. You need to fund education appropriately, and before you put in anything that is something you're adding, a pet project, increasing something, adding more money in something else over here, you take care of the basics. You don't go on a trip to Disney if your roof is leaking. Take care of your roof. Thank you, John.
And one of the things that's not in the formula, the hold harmless provision that gives us a 0 or small increase every year is not in the formula. So even if they put that in the formula, that would be something beneficial to us, I think, to say that every year you'll at least get 2 or 3% and make that official in the foundation aid formula, because it's not there right now. So those, the Institute's doing their report. It's not far away. It's December of 2024. They're supposed to present those findings to the governor, and we'll see what happens, I guess, when they do that and what the impact could be in us. But there's a lot of question marks is what I'm trying to say right now. There's a lot of question marks going into next year on what our aid level could be. Any other questions? Thank you.
So Jane, for ECASB, what are they, how are they trying to get involved in possibly getting the right people
So
involved in this foundation aid reevaluation?
as the program services manager there, we haven't done a lot during the summer. We're keeping an eye on it. We're really letting NYSBA take the lead on this one. And the first legislative team meeting is on September 19th, and that's when our team will probably jump right back in and start figuring out how. I'm sure that this will be something that is communicated at the breakfast that our local legislators go to on November 16th. It's always good to have as many board members there that we can. It's Saturday morning, it's breakfast, it's nice, and you get to sit with Senator Gallivan and Assemblyman DiPietro if they are able to attend. We'll, and be able to have conversation with what this is going to mean for Iroquois. And I think Jim is our legislative rep again this year, so, do you have something more you want to jump in on?
Obviously, we haven't had the conversations yet. I think that last night they announced that public comment to the Rockefeller Center has closed. I think right now we're hopeful, but it doesn't look like that this is going to be good for the Iroquois district when they're done. That's kind of like the whispers, for not just Iroquois, but the districts like us coming out. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, right there. Easier.
Okay, next we'll go to 5.02, Artificial Intelligence by Mr. Villani, who just finished coaching. So thank you for coming. We appreciate that immensely.
And I did, just so the board knows, I did promise him we'd be very accepting of his coaching attire. He didn't have to run home and change. He offered, he said he would do it, and I said I'd much rather see him because artificial intelligence, when they say it, he comes to my mind. And I don't know if that means he's a cyborg or something, but.
I am no cyborg. The team did win, yes. And
Congratulations.
They played very well, and they made us all proud like they always do. So, am I being picked up? Everybody here? Yeah. All right. Well, hello, thank you. First of all, as Doug said, I do apologize for this. It's not the most professional attire, but I hope the message is still well received. We're out there today, and the girls do us proud like they always do. So, Dr. Dudek and Mr. Schofield asked me to just share about 6 or 7 minutes with you about the progress of artificial intelligence here in our school district. This is exactly what the field is calling for. It's calling for schools to be forward-thinking. It's calling for schools to look ahead at what our students need to be 21st century learners, but also people who can contribute to a society which is ever-changing and ever-evolving outside the walls of what we can even provide them here at times in our classrooms. So I'd like to show you how we are leveraging the things that are in the field now to help our students, but also more importantly, at this level and where I'm standing, to help our teachers. To help our teachers plan the lessons which are going to be used to make the lessons in the room more creative but more relevant and more rigorous, and to really reform the instruction through technology as opposed to simply doing what we've always done with another fancy tool which might cost money. We can use the tools to now really reform what's happening. Not telling you something you don't know, but if you look at the screen, you see this is everywhere. If we're going to try to deny that AI can ever infiltrate our lives, it has, and it has for many years. AI has been around since at least 15 years within our devices in our pockets, all of us right now, telling them where you are at all times, right? If you use spell check, you're using a form of that. If you have Amazon and you jump on and it suggests anything to you, artificial intelligence, Face ID on your phone, Netflix giving you suggestions, all there. But what makes it different in today's educational field is that this AI is now generative AI. What does that mean? Generative AI simply means that the nature of how the AI is learning has changed. It's a large language model. It's an LLM, as they call it. It learns from everything that's being inputted into it throughout the platform. OpenAI has become, it's changed hands several times in the last couple of years. It's currently owned by Microsoft. Microsoft has the resources to make sure that it gets into every nook and cranny of our digital lives and our digital existences, and they allow that to learn. So, what does that mean for us in a school? All right. First thing we have to answer are some questions. The first thing is, what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT is openly accepted, openly utilized by everybody in the society right now, and our kids. Informally surveying kids in school, I ask, they're using it. right? To deny that it's being used is to put our head under a rock. We can't move forward that way. It's being used. The problem with that is ChatGPT free version 3.0 has not been, finger quotes, learning since 2021. All right? You have to purchase ChatGPT 4.0, which is pricey, and the kids are not utilizing that. They're using the old one. That brings problems. Accuracy is a problem. Bias is an issue, right? People want to run to the bias problem with AI, and the first thing I say is it's a bias reflective of our very own society. It learns from us. It's simply reflecting our biases, right? Teaching kids in the classroom to distinguish between levels of bias and point of view is something we spend a lot of time in the high school. We have to continue to foster those types of instructions. Equity for students. I'm big on this. My research at UB, one of the things I wanted to make sure was if we simply say we're not going to do it and we blanket ban it, fine, but kids are using it. But who are the kids who can't use it then? The kids who only have access to a school-issued device, right? So if a young person goes home and they have a laptop at home and they have a desktop and they have multiple accesses to data and into the web, they're going to use it. I promise you they're going to use it. But the kid who only has our device is limited. And we have to make sure we're making this a level playing field and not widening gaps that already are in existence. And then the idea of understanding how can this be applied to our classroom and why does it matter? AI, from my lens, we can have debates, and that's going to be really an issue for this particular group of people about the student use. That's out of my league, right? That's not something that I have the authority or the background in research to talk about. I can't talk about how teachers can use it. Right? How can it inform and reform student instruction and lesson design? There are two models used in the field that talk about lesson design. One's called the SAMR model. When you integrate technology, are you simply using it to substitute? Best example, we have a chalk, in that spot right there at one point was probably a chalkboard. Then it became a whiteboard. Then it became a smartboard. But it's always used the same way. We put information up there, we circle things, we tell kids to write the notes down. That's substitution. You're using expensive toys to do the thing that we've always done. Augmentation, modification, redefinition, those are all up the transformative scale of integration of technology. That's a nice model. The one I'm very interested in and how AI can help us in this district is TPAC. TPAC is made up of a Venn diagram made up of three things: technology knowledge, pedagogy knowledge, and content knowledge. All three things that a teacher must integrate in their classroom in 2024. What does that mean? That means we've all had in our experience a teacher who was brilliant beyond words with the content. They knew history better than anybody you've ever met, but they couldn't teach. Their pedagogical skills didn't match up. We've had people who could teach anything, but they didn't know the history, right? So we have people who live just in content or just in pedagogy. They redid this research in 2006 to include technology and add a third layer to this, right? Some people are brilliant with technology. They're brilliant with the content, but they can't teach, right? What we try to do using the TPAC model is to overlap all three of those and find what they call the sweet spot. A teacher who utilizes technology to reform lessons while maintaining the rigor of the content and also utilizing pedagogy which speaks to 21st century learners. Challenging, to say the least. I spent about 3 years at a school district in Western New York that I codenamed Hiawatha School District. A nod to our heritage here at Iroquois. And the Hiawatha School District, I studied the teachers for 1 year. I studied the teachers and watched their lessons. Up on the screen, not to get too deep in the woods, you see most of what I found, 94 instances of classroom lessons that were just simply substitution. Nice lessons, dynamic lessons, waste of money. Right? They're using money on technology they could have done with a chalkboard. I found only 18 times did I see anything that approached reformative instruction. I then looked at the substitution level and so forth, and I saw all of the training. I studied the training that took place in this district over the next year. I went back and studied again for my dissertation study. And I watched, why are the teachers doing this? Why aren't they reforming? I looked at the administrative piece. I looked at the instruction and professional development. There was no training to help them to get to that sweet spot of technology, pedagogy, content knowledge. If you look at this on the front screen, that's a breakdown of all the data. It's all readily available if you ever want to lose yourself or sit with me for several hours, and I love to talk about it, and no one likes to talk to me about it. But on that screen, that brown overlap, that's the sweet spot between technology, pedagogy, and content. 0. 3 years. 3 years I spent in that district. I didn't see it. Doesn't mean they're not great teachers. Doesn't mean it's not fantastic staff development. It's just almost impossible to attain until AI walked into our lives in the last 2 years. Not looking at it from the student lens, from the teacher lens. All right? This summer I spent some time with some teachers. I'm currently trying to find a way to do more research on this and get it into the field from my own personal interest. And what I saw this summer gives me all kinds of ideas to enhance the research. What I saw this summer is that AI and the tools that we utilize through the school district and the work of Dr. Dudek and Ken Piasante and Samantha Ping is we're able to foster creativity in the teachers by mitigating the most important variable in teacher development of lessons, which is time, right? It's time. They're all crushed for time. And all of us are sitting there saying, I wish I could. Oh my God, remember when I used to, but I got this now and that now. That's gone. AI takes care of those things. It absolutely, and you can speak to any number of the people who worked this summer. The first thing they'll say is, oh my God, my ideas went from here into reality because time was no longer an issue. It provides a content expert. I can give you evidence of that. You can see that if you'd like to see that at some point. But the AI content expert with proper, what's the word I'm looking for? You got to monitor it. It makes mistakes. The teacher's still the expert. All right? The teacher's still the expert. It allows for collaborative design through iterations of design. Keep the same plan moving and keep working it over and over with other people across multiple digital platforms. It moved technology into the sweet spot. And without even trying this summer, in 3 days of lesson design, I saw 4 standout lessons where I spent 3 years at a district that spent millions on technology integration. I didn't see one. One young lady in our very own school district is teaching a book called Flowers for Algernon. She's in our middle school. It's a challenging book, but it's also an old book. It's a traditional book. In that, there's a story of a young man who has challenges, all right? And she always tries to prepare her students to understand that there are people in this world that have challenges, all right? So she always struggled. How can I find a way to let these kids learn? Can I bring someone in to talk about disabilities? Can I talk about different things? And she's always struggled with that. Can she bring a student in who has disabilities to try to talk? I don't want to do that, right? It's a very challenging thing to do. In one session, the 3 of us, and she did all the work, she set up a bell ringer activity, as it's called, where she now had 6 AI-generated students at the same age group who would answer any question about any disability those kids had. They had a personality, and the kids were allowed to interact with it. It took that variable right into her reality and allowed her to mitigate all the outside other issues with that. Role play of Germany 1935. I saw a teacher design. If you've been to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, you walk in, you get a card, you get a personality. It walks you through what happened to that person in the war. What a great idea, but what teacher has the time to develop 35 separate personalities? Did it in AI within about 3 minutes. Created cards, created a lesson. The kids walk in the room, they're handed this. They set up debates, point of view. Some kids took the role of a German citizen. Some kids took the role of a Jewish citizen. And here they are having these conversations through the lens of Anne Frank. Having conversations with Anne Frank, all right? The recreation of a trial of Louis XVI, I saw. Today, September 11th, one of the most sacred days in our history, Mr. Lauber in the high school set up a situation where he had kids taking roles and interviewing people who were at the scene. In his classroom. They weren't at the scene. It's all AI generated through the information, right? And they're allowed to talk to them, ask them questions. That, ladies and gentlemen, is using technology, content knowledge, and hitting that sweet spot. All right? It's collaborating. It's talking to kids who are digital natives, which none of us are. We were born in a world without this. They were not. And this allows us to speak to them in a better way. What are we doing here at Iroquois so far? Here's the things we've done so far on the front screen. The global studies and U.S. history teachers in the high school last year used AI to inform our student gaps between state assessments and reading comprehension. What does that mean? We examined 5 years worth of exams, pumped them through ChatGPT and then pumped them through school AI to ask them, what is the reading level we're seeing here? We found those reading levels. We used text levelers to take the readings and put them to the level which could be used, especially for our children with disabilities and who have IEPs. Bring the level of reading down, build it up throughout the year. Great success we found with that. We identified using the same AI tools, what were the most commonly used vocabulary words, both Tier 2 and Tier 3 words found in the state assessments. We then spent the next 4 months using vocabulary building skills, again, AI programs, to help the kids learn that vocabulary. It's not that the kids didn't know the history, they didn't understand words like compare. They didn't understand words like relevant, right? It was amazing that the things we found out. and the things that we as a group talked about. We have a PLC currently running in the high school called Teach AI, which meets every Friday morning for a half hour. We get together, we have conversations. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? We share the ideas, A+ stuff. That's being branched in middle school this summer.
Just so you guys ever know, some people might, PLC is a professional learning community.
Yeah.
Group of people getting together, sharing ideas.
And we meet outside of contract hours. We all agree to come in and we bring Tim Hortons and we have our talks. And we have very strict ground rules about what can be talked about, and it's this. It's positive energy in that room. We have staff development this summer where 12 secondary teachers and 7 primary school teachers sat together for 3 days and just kicked butt, designing lessons. And I've worked in this district for 24 years, and I've met people this summer, I had no idea what they're doing, how good they're doing it. And I watched their faces go from, oh, AI, the kids are going to cheat. Whoa, and by the end, just glowing and beaming. And I got a message just yesterday. Hey, Rich, what would you do here? It's alive. It's happening. It's a fire's been lit. A fire's been lit. 12 secondary teachers, 7 primary school teachers. They came in, what can I do? How can I do this with my kids? These kids are 4 years old, they're 5 years old. Oh, I can do this. And they were making lessons, right? Simple lessons about color, simple lessons about the firemen who live in your neighborhood. Like, it was amazing to watch what I was watching. This summer also, through Dr. Dudek and through Samantha Ping, we established 5 separate courses through Erie One BOCES utilizing AI tools. It's getting into our staff. They're using it across this district. Samantha Ping, to say something about her, she has brought these 3 platforms to our staff. School AI, Magic School, and Microsoft Copilot. All 3 of them have different and unique uses, and they're all being utilized through multiple members of staff in this district. She is such a unique individual because she speaks to the pedagogy in the classroom as opposed to simply the technology. She's living in the P and trying to find that overlap between TP and content knowledge.
Rich, if I could just, for those who may not know who Sam Ping is a BOCES person who we have purchased days for her to come and work with teachers for the pure and simple integration of technology at that upper level.
And what's fantastic about her, and I beg to consider moving forward, is she speaks to pedagogy. She doesn't speak to the platform, she speaks to how to use the platform to make teachers understand that how can they take already fantastic lessons and reform them and speak to 21st century learners through the lens of what's required by us through the state and just society and through the goals of what we need here as citizens. Last slide here. What does this mean at your level to consider? There's very few approved AI sites for students. We are not alone as a district that's not finding a way to utilize it with the students. That's normal. There's very few things that have Ed Law 2 agreements in place. Some do, but not all. However, teachers can access this stuff, all right? So one of the things we were very careful about this summer is to make sure that any work you do is very sanitized, to not include student work or AI or e-resources that could ever identify the student's personal identification. All right, give you an example. If I had a student, this is going back in the first days of AI, Mr. V. Oh, I love ChatGPT. Why? Well, because I just wrote a cover letter for a job. Oh, great. What'd you do? I just uploaded my resume. I'm like, whoa, big guy, can't do that. Because now, if I put my resume into ChatGPT, the name Rich Violani is learned, all right? Somewhere in Oregon, some kid's saying, write me a story about whatever, and all of a sudden one of the characters' names is Rich Violante, right? And he probably doesn't do so well in the story, but this is why you have to be, this has got to be trained, this has to be learned, this is digital citizenship that we have to teach the kids, and this is something that was stressed in all the development this summer. Until further guidance does come, the things we're stressing with teachers is to operate under current acceptable use guidelines for technology with an emphasis on academic integrity and protection of student information in line with Ed Law 2D. So that's where we are. I wanted to share that with you. I'm blessed that they allowed me to do that. It's exciting. There's a link in one of the slides. It sends you to all the lessons that were designed this summer. If you have 10 minutes, poke around, see what people are doing using artificial intelligence. It's exciting, and we're in front. I'll tell you, the district right now is moving in front. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Rich. To go along with that, as Rich said, this is relatively new technology, and I can remember 3 years ago us talking about it and school districts talking about it in larger meetings, and there's a fear of sharing information and bias and incorrect information. So a lot of school districts, we've just been talking. Well, what we went ahead and did is we surveyed Erie 1 and Erie 2 BOCE school component districts. And what we found is, what Rich said is, we are in the, if we're not the true leader, but we're pretty far ahead. Most districts have been spending, are using opportunities to get their administrators and teachers trained. Because when you get your administrators and teachers trained, the fears tends to relax, and people start to realize, just like the teachers that Rich worked with, that they realize how beneficial it can be. Very few districts are opening it up to students, and in fact, our school, and Rich is correct, if a student is using one of our school-purchased computers, ChatGPT, Copilot are blocked for students, but they're open for teachers. But it's true. Kids can get at it on their phone. And so what we are planning to do is just continue to educate. Other things that the school districts talked about that they're using it for: curriculum planning, communication, data analysis, pedagogy, and they're not really married to any one particular program, because ChatGPT seems to be the mothership of all of them. And so therefore, when you might have seen a Canva commercial, well, Canva has AI attached to it that is ChatGPT generated. So, they're also currently struggling with EdLaw 2D.
Just to follow up one more time on that, Dr. Dudek made a great point. The reality of students not having access, a lot of that has to do with academic integrity, right? College campuses right now are wrestling big time with this issue, right? How do you affirm that a dissertation is done by the student that's done it, right? This is a problem. For our level, what I argue and what the field of research is tending to argue right now is the answer is in the lesson design. Create lessons that can't just be, write me an essay about the book Flowers for Algernon, right? Do lesson design which speaks to true reformation and true reforming of the goals. The days of a traditional book report, the days of a traditional essay, they might simply just be a bygone era at this point, because it will simply come back to you through ChatGPT. And it's almost impossible to identify. School districts, college campuses are spending millions of dollars with, finger quote, AI identifiers. I would not jump on that ship.
Isn't, just kind of to circle back and to kind of close it out, it seems to be a lot like, you can see you're excited for it. It's like, I just remember when I was many years ago in high school in the library, there was one computer that had internet access through American Online. And there were, we were ahead.
You had a computer in your school?
What?
You had a computer in your school?
Yeah, yes. And the thing was, though, because of American Online, the way it worked and footnoting, a lot of teachers were concerned, and there was a lot of back and forth. But in the same way, through time, it worked itself out. That doesn't work, this works, we should do this, we shouldn't do that. And I just think, truly, just like that, this is still truly more of a journey. We don't know where we're going to end up, but there's a lot of positive to it. And there's some negative, but we just have to be willing to go and take that journey and then just be sensible along the way. We've done this through society. Years ago, I remember my grandmother saying, they got lights now in Springville. But it's the same thing. It's just adapting to it and understanding it as you go, and that the story's not written yet. And then in 10 years, there's going to be someone else up here talking about whatever is the next, maybe there will be a cyborg teacher.
In the 13 years that we've run professional development that I've helped to, schedule, I have never gotten the feedback that I have from teachers on a particular teacher. that I have from Rich, and I just want to thank him. And also, I want to thank all the teachers and the administrators that are taking the risk and learning something new that could be scary, but they're taking it on.
Which is important.
I just got a couple things as AI, machine learning, deep learning is kind of my background. I look at slide 8 and you has a significant number of use cases, almost to the point where it seems too wide.
Which one was it? Is this 8?
Slide 8,
I don't have
yeah.
a number.
Second to the last. There you go.
This one, okay.
So in those current use cases that you have, it seems to me it's like a kid with a new toy on Christmas morning, right? You're like, oh, we can do all these things. My question to you would be is how do you put the guardrails on to make sure the focus is moving the needle forward without going through a research project? Because what you've done in research is helpful, but now you have to have a transfer function then to adopt it into mainstream to the schools and safety and all those other pieces. So my question is, how do you manage something like that? And it's not something maybe you have to answer today, but something to consider. How do you manage that with guardrails, and what areas do you truly focus on with open source? Because that's what we're talking about here. This is open source information. Anybody can use it, anybody can get a hold of it, but it goes both ways.
Yep.
And so it's a question based on safety, security. It's also a question based on technical depth and academic depth of how we're trying to use it. And so I think there's a lot of uses for it. I'm totally for AI, machine learning, all of that, deep learning. I think it makes sense, but it's unclear to me where you really want to take it or where the direction is. Just exposing it, scratching the surface helps. But I'm looking for something a little more finite to say, here's our go-forward plan, here are the steps we may want to take, here's our milestones that might be interesting, but again, with the guardrails that need to be set.
Great question. And you'll hear no shortage of people referring to this right now as the Wild West, to your
Exactly.
point, right? Because truly, it's a battle for these platforms. Like, which one's going to survive? Which one's going to get the EdLaw 2 agreements? Which one's going to make it?
Yep.
We're truly at the cutting edge. We are living in the world of the first time we've seen this, and everyone knows that, and it's a race to the user, right? My answer to your question about guardrails, I think, emerged in the research I did at this neighboring school district. When talking to the teachers in multiple interviews over multiple visits, the one thing that became an emergent finding in that research was that teachers felt at times they were left on their own to learn something. The staff development seems to have a tendency across districts to be implemented and then forgotten. And then we move on to the next thing and the next program, right? And I don't mean a news program, it's just they never ask about it again. We don't follow up. Hey, how's it going, right? And teachers got a tendency to feel that they had to learn things alone. Now, to be fair, the bias within the research is a lot of this study took place during COVID when teachers truly were on their own to learn and navigate a new technology, which was remote learning, right? There was no opportunity for a district to help the teachers. It was go, do it, and do it. So my answer to you, I believe, a potential answer is found in the research that support and guidance through people like Samantha Ping, through people like Ken Piacente, through people like Dr. Dudek and all of her work with the staff development. Bring them in, talk to them, and establish the guidelines. At some point, a Board of Education provides some type of acceptable use policies, and we move in that direction. In the same way, I was alive. I worked the first time the internet came into school. Just the internet, it's how many teachers across the globe, had to learn the guardrails of utilizing internet in school before we figured out filters, before we figured out acceptable use policies. I think the answer is in training. That's just a non-researched theory, but it's what I believe it is. It's support from administrative staff and fellow teachers.
My response is, I think that's still too wide. I think there's a use case that is very finite that could be considered. So look forward to hearing more as we go through this process, for sure.
We'll be going through it together.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Galante.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you.
Moving on to the 5.03, the work session September 8th, involving the NYSSBA resolutions. Really, the important thing here is we don't need to spend a lot of time on it right now because September 18th we have the the work session for it, is to go over them, and they're in our board docs, because so we can kind of give Heather, who has volunteered, volunteered to be at this meeting, to be our voice. And why it's important, because I think there's 37 of them, but an example of just one of them is, and not to discuss it, but it's like, resolve, this is number 31, resolve the New York State School Board Association shall oppose any legislation or New York State Education Department regulation mandating comprehensive K through 12 gender and sexual education. So this is what we're telling NYSBA to tell our legislatures that's important to us. And that is like not something to discuss right now, but that is a big topic. So I guess all I'm saying for right now is just please spend the time, read over these resolutions, so Heather is not like guessing how we feel, on the meeting. Exactly. And that's just my final point on that one, just so we come there, we can have a good conversation and kind of know how we feel on each one ahead of time, because some of them are pretty deep.
So Jim, I actually have a conflict on that day. Either maybe we can move it, or if we can't, which is fine, then I think, then I can respond via email.
And that would be fine, because it's a work
Just
session.
to make sure that,
Yeah.
there's input there. I just, I've got a conflict on that night.
That would be, that would be fine through email, because like I said, it's the work session.
6 o'clock.
Okay.
What room are we meeting in?
Here.
Right here.
Moving on to, we got two more, because I'm going to add one at the very end of this, is just to wrap up. But we have to have the roundtable review and discussion. We began talking about it at the district planning committee. I believe that the community roundtable and the student roundtables, there wasn't, that's seems to be set, and there was consensus there. It was the staff roundtable that we were going to talk about, and the concerns were how to do it where it's meaningful and constructive. In other words, the way we did it last year, the teachers and the staff brought a lot of points, but because of our role as a school board, a lot of it was, thank you, the administration handles this. So in other words, do we want to continue that type of dialogue? Do we want to change it? Do we want to eliminate it? We talked about the idea of doing it where the teachers especially submitted a whole bunch of questions, anonymously ahead of time, so that we could look through them and have answers prepared to those questions, so no one's raising their hand. Those are just things that were thrown out. We're just kind of looking to, tack that down. So I guess, anyone?
I'll jump in. I like the idea of allowing teachers to write questions anonymously that we can then answer. It would also maybe help the teachers understand what the role of the board is, because we'd be able to pick questions and say, this is a question that really needs to be directed in this, to this person, or needs to be answered by so-and-so. So that might give us a little bit more of an open, ability to be able to really have some rich conversation with the teachers. And it also allows teachers who can't attend for whatever reason to at least have their questions be considered. But I do think that having some kind of a roundtable with our teachers is still, vital to to our goals to outreach to community, staff, et cetera.
And my theory originally was, because I'm somewhat uncomfortable with the concept with the teachers and how to do it correctly, but I suggested that means because it allows us, so we're not being put in the middle between administrators and teachers and, refereeing. That was kind of what I came up with as a suggestion or a middle ground. I guess what do you think?
I think it's important. I've noticed over the course that I've been on the board that we are losing a lot of good people and a lot of people that are tenured. And one of the questions I had mentioned about what the process is when an employee leaves, as far as exit interviews and really understanding why good people are leaving our district willingly, and make sure that we retain talent and understand maybe some of the more wider issues that maybe the administrators maybe don't see or whatever, but I don't want to continue to lose good people from our district. So I don't know if we want to discuss that exit interview process here now or take that offline.
I would say Dave could answer that, but I would say finish your roundtable, and then
we'll
we can
roundtable.
jump right
But
into it, so we're
kind of
not
was
mixing.
related to
Yeah, no,
listening to the staff.
right, but we'll just,
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's going to be a
table it.
place for that,
Yeah.
after we finish up this one.
Yeah. And if they were to provide feedback anonymously, or would that just be during the period of the roundtable or at any point in time, I guess?
I guess my vision is that, ahead of time, the questions would be submitted. We'd probably have to time it right and do a work session, come up with the answers and our response, and actually have the round table, but a little bit more like this, where the teachers would be, I don't want to say in the audience, but in the audience, and then we could go through and answer those questions. And like Jane said, this one, great question, but this is for an administrator, great, you know what I mean? And that way they can, what is our role and what is the administration role? It allows us to do both. And we allow them to still have their voice.
Okay.
And we may get more because would be an anonymous way of doing it.
The only thing that I can see as an issue with that is that in the past, we have had issues where teachers didn't want to take a survey or whatnot because they didn't feel like anonymous really was anonymous. So you'd have to find out a way to ensure for those teachers that their questions truly were anonymous. I don't know how you do that.
We'll get Rich back in here.
Yeah, we'll get Rich back in here.
well, and on the same token, before they were coming in person and saying it, so it wasn't anonymous.
Yeah.
So it is, you say it's anonymous, the union, I'm sure, will support us in that because union knows they truly are anonymous. Encourage the teachers to do it. I'm sure the union leadership would put anything in that someone was uncomfortable with for them.
Right.
So we'd still get the question. I think the goal is to get the question,
That's a good idea.
not really who
Yeah.
it's from.
That's why I think it may encourage more to come forth. Because it does, at the end of the day, you got to, give them a lot of credit. It's when you come into a room like this, and you stand up, and you ask a question, that can be uncomfortable for people. So maybe, and maybe, here's the other thing, if we do it this way, I don't care if it's just a Dropbox, if we get like 45 or 55 of the same, that would be, at least we will know it's a high priority to, a wider base.
True, yeah.
So do we agree to try this format?
I like it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this format will help. I think also as we actually go through it, we want to make sure that it's facilitated as well, right? And so the only question I then would have is there a response or is it one-sided? We get a question, we answer it, and there's no conversation. Because I'm not sure, the intent of the roundtables is to get some feedback. But I think there has to be engagement to get feedback, right? So the purpose of the roundtable, as far as I can tell by definition, is to get feedback from the people that are the teachers and the folks that are in school every day. And so I think the questions are good. I think I would also open it up for other questions, after we get through that are maybe timed, so that if there is some additional ones that people want to bring up or don't feel like there was a good enough answer, we're trying to secure some additional feedback. My only risk is that it has to be moderated in a manner that we're not just getting overwhelmed.
I use a program with my college students called Mentimeter, and it would be super easy to set up so that if we did a response and then there was follow-up questions, the audience members can actually log in using a QR code or a code on an, as part of a website address. It does not say who they are. They can type their question in and it pops up on the screen, and we could look at the questions from that. If you want to try that, I'd be happy to use my Mentimeter.
I think that's a good idea, and I think what's going to happen, and it's going to take a little bit of work with Nora, setting up a time frame to get the questions, then having the work session when we have the questions, and then figuring out that part of it.
Out of curiosity, has anybody reached out to the teacher leadership, their union leadership, to see if this sounds like something, like a method that they would want to actually partake in, or are we just sort of spitballing an idea where that they're just going to be like, we're not doing that?
No, that's where we were at this summer planning, is that we know what we didn't get the results and work the way we wanted to do it, so we were coming up with a new procedure. So I think now would be the time
To reach out to the
Yeah.
union and see if
Until
they,
you know what
if
you're
they'd
doing, you're
be-
not going to walk up and
Yeah, if
say,
they-
hey, we're not sure what we're doing yet. How do you like our idea?
Yeah, okay. I'd be curious to see if the teachers are, listening to this and saying, yeah, that sounds like a really great idea. Let's do it that way. Let's try it.
Now we have an idea, so I think we can have the comment on it.
Yeah, and I have a meeting tomorrow with the union. Dave and I do, so we can
Okay.
talk to them right then.
And then, under our board discussion, this is the part where we can open it up a little bit, and one of the examples are, I know Erie County School Board just started. I don't know if anyone's been to any meetings or, any reports from different schools. This would be the time where we could have, we were all just, watching the modified football game, and honestly, the one thing I noticed between the 34 cheerleaders and the 48 modified players, the stands were full, which is really cool to see on a modified level that it was packed. And our athletic director was there, the superintendent was there, Dave was there. So this is that time where, we can talk about that, anything we experienced. I know, Heather, the questions you have, now would be the time that we're going to do that.
We can do the first one that she gave us. I did receive a question from a board member that said, how do we measure, what is the process to perform exit interviews, and what data is collected during this process? Concerned about the number of tenure employees that are leaving the district, are genuinely, if I get that right, concerned about the number of employees that are leaving the district, and what are the underlying reasons for people leaving. You weren't here, Todd, but I want to say 4 to 6 months ago, this question did come up at the round table, so we did take an executive session and go over every single person that left over the last 4 years. The reasons why. So we can do that for you if you want to get caught up with that anytime you want. Dave is the one who does the exit interviews. So, Dave, what is your process?
Yep. Once we receive a letter of resignation from an employee, whatever reason they're leaving, retirement, whatever it might be, we then set up a meeting with them for the exit interview. Myself and Sue Armovich, she joins me. We have a set series of questions that I ask them, and we go through. Sue's there, she's great, she helps me kind of collect the notes and collect their thoughts. Every now and then, there might be follow-up questions or questions that I need to kind of deviate from what we normally ask, just for clarity or things like that. All that information is collected through Sue, that's then shared with me. All that information is kept, and then I do track everybody who's left year by year.
And if you remember, the executive says he did categorize them and then go over that categorization of, were they happy, unhappy, was there outside reason, family reason, so we can see the patterns there.
And I think that the questioner, the motivation behind it was that at some point, that probably in executive session, that the board, gets the good, bad, and ugly. Is it a trend? Is it isolated?
Yep.
And that's when you do it, when you go over that with an executive session, correct?
Yep, that's what we did last year. We went into executive session, we shared that information with the board, so I'm more than willing if, we need to do that again, sit in an executive session, I can share whatever information I have.
Yeah, we can update from, except for Todd, we have to get them all. We can update you from where we left off at last time, or go over, it would be 5 years now that we would have data for.
Yep, we've been doing it 5 years, correct.
We only have one this year so far, is that correct?
One, we have, you gotta remember, it's both teachers, then I have CSEA
Okay, yes,
members,
yes.
so we're at about, I think I'll look, we had about 4 people, but that's including all unions involved,
Yep.
so.
Teachers, aides,
Correct,
bus drivers,
everybody.
clerical.
And just, for just very real general surface, From your interviews, are you noticing any trends, or is it just different things? Not specifics, just is there a trend, or?
No, I'm not noticing any serious trends. I would say the majority of people leaving the district are leaving on happy terms, enjoy their time here, enjoy their time working with people, enjoy working for the district, and had positive things to say. So.
Yeah. But I would just add to that, just to be clear to everyone watching, it's not 100%. There are people that
Of course.
are upset with certain things. Most of those things, if we would have to talk about, we would have to go in executive session because they do bring up personnel identifiable features.
Exactly.
So I just got a quick question. Out of the last 12 months, were there any direct changes that you needed to make based on someone leaving?
I wouldn't say direct changes, but it's always, what I tell people in there, we want to continue doing the things we're doing great, but if there's things that we need to tweak or work on, we need to work on those things.
We have gone back and given feedback or corrective criticism to people that are mentioned in it, and then, some instances, again, it's one person telling us, we'd have to witness something that there are monitorings that go on.
Okay.
Another question I received was, we did have a payroll issue this summer, or did we have a payroll issue this summer where employees were not paid? How did this happen, and what do we do to ensure this doesn't happen again? Great question. I know every time we hire a treasurer, I say, I don't know what that is.
It was
There's a maintenance guy with a flashlight.
Oh, he's checking the doors and the
Yeah.
locks. Don't get me out of Sasquatch.
Yeah.
So when we hire him, I say there's one thing I want to make sure is done. I want to make sure it's done right, and you have to hit it every time, and that's payroll. Payroll has to go out. It has to be hit. That's a conversation I have with the business office, and I want to say in this case, business office, was exceptional in what they did, and they went above and beyond. What happened is, this had to do with staff development during the summer. It's not a regular pay. We pay it at the end of July, at the end of August, and we catch up with people at the first pay in September. So they don't get a regular paycheck. It goes like a month and they get paid, goes like a month, they get paid, and then we do a catch-up. What happened this year, July was done well. There were hiccups, mistakes in going into the August one. The August one was on the 23rd. With it being on the 23rd, typically it's later than that. We've done the same process for the last 10 years. When the 23rd being a Friday, I think it was Monday, I want to say right about the same time, the curriculum office is where the hiccup occurred. They came in and told me at the same time I was getting a text message from the union with people saying, why didn't we get our pay last Friday? They didn't get a hold of me, no one got a hold of me over the weekend. And so from there, we looked at it and we said, oh my God, next pay is in September, which is one of their pays, but if someone worked July 5th, you could see, well, I worked July 5th, it's been a month, why didn't I get it? So I want to say Heidi over in Mary Jo's office and then over in the business office, they worked to produce an extra payroll, so they did get paid by the end of August, so that payroll did happen. I know it happened because Thursday, typically pays the days on Friday, but Thursday, the union president was texting me, thank you for getting this done, getting it out there and getting the people paid. Talk to Mary Jo about it, so I don't know if you want to talk anything right now at this point.
Yeah, first of all, actually, this is the biggest mistake I've ever made, and I truly apologize. I sent an email to the teachers. In the 13 years that I've been doing this is the first time it's happened. What happened, I think, was that I had the collection date set on the 23rd, not realizing that it was the payroll date. Because I typically have one more week where I go a week ahead and then I approve. I understand, because I've been in that position where you're anxiety-ridden because you were counting on that pay. So thankfully, John and Heidi and Sue and Karen, they came together and they truly helped us out. What we're doing to prevent this in the future is that prior to the professional development catalog going out, I'm going to confirm with the business department and say, okay, what are the pay dates so that they can match up so that we can have those paid properly. Typically, it is one in July and one in August, and as Doug said, catching up for anyone who, because sometimes some teachers like to group them all at once and get one larger pay, and some like to get it paid as they're going along. So that September date is where we go through and say, okay, let's make certain that everyone who submitted has been paid.
So, and we are sorry to the teachers that some people had to go through that anxiety period of, oh, I'm not getting it, how am I going to make it? But we did, I always like at the end of the month, getting paid is a great thing because you have your bills usually come in the beginning of the month. Now, I know some people I do pay bills on the 25th of a month, so that would be stressful, so we are sorry that happened to them. The other question, and we have things to set in place, so it should not happen again. Another question I had from a board member was, how do we measure if we are exceeding the number of students that are in a single class? So what we get, what we have is, this is a principal responsibility. The principals take care of this measure, they set up schedules and everything. And we did have an individual here who worked at one point, and I kind of laughed because it doesn't work. They said, well, if you have 100 kids and you have a class of 25 and you divide by 25, you need 4 periods, and that's how it's done. That's not a real world situation in schools because you have balancing electives, pull-outs. It never works that smooth. So when I look at it coming from the principals, I ask 3 questions of what is causing a problem and what, actually, thank you for asking the question because I would have to write all this in the Friday memo. Now I don't have to, so I greatly appreciate it. That there's a computer science discovery class, creative design engineering, and 2 PEs where we are over. And so I say, well, is this number one question, is this a lack of staffing? If it's a lack of staffing, we don't have enough people, that's a problem. To me, it's a twofold problem because it's not so hard to figure out what the staffing numbers are going to be other than kindergarten, because you look at first grade, they go to second grade goes to third grade, all the way up to high school. And this is not a lack of staffing issue looking at these classes. They're well aware of it. They had that coming up. The next thing I look at is number of periods in a day. If you don't have enough periods in a day, then what you have is outlets. And we talked about this, like with the high school and the schedule they use to have the outlets for kids to attend, so you can schedule people to do it. Because you figure if you have 800 kids and, one teacher, or the teacher teaches English and there's 8 periods, you would have 100 kids every period. If there's 9 periods, that would go down. It's not a number of periods thing in a day. So that gets to the third thing. That typically is here at Iroquois because the administrators are good at looking at the staffing and the number of periods in a day, and this is student needs, and it's the balancing of the classes. So how many do you have, and is there a switch from one year to the next? So this has happened in 7th grade this year, and what you had happen was last year we had 19 fewer kids, and when they go to do the classes there and how they balance between PE and STREAM, that it caused classes to get above, and where the notice kicks in is at 27, because that's in the contract and what it says in there, and this is how I get notified of it, is at that point, and it also goes to the superintendent and the board. It's in the IFA contract that the principals have to notify me and you, and that's a safeguard for the union to make sure you're aware, because if you see this happening for all the English classes, well, the board can say, well, whoa, we're willing to put more money towards English teachers. Why are you, we don't want large class sizes. We want to put the money towards it and to make sure you're aware of this. Is this uncommon? No. COVID years, obviously, we didn't have any before COVID. You typically get around phys ed classes because of balancing, more so in the high school usually because you have like how many kids are going to a CTE class coming back. In fact, when I went and talked to the principal to find out what this reason was this year of why it was, thought it might have been because of foreign language. because kids shifted there. Typically, they're predominantly taking one language over the other, and it turned out to be the balancing between the PE and STREAM classes. There's nothing in any of the four core classes where this is happening. We do monitor it. We will see. So if there's a pattern here, we would change it. It's not uncommon. That's the trigger. I just sent me that notification of sending that out in the Friday memo. So thank you.
So if it exceeds, is 27 the magic number?
That's the number where the notifications
Okay.
go out, yes.
So if it exceeds 27, do we typically have like extra teacher assistant in there or an aide or?
It would depend
someone
on the
to-
class
Okay.
and what's going on. Phys ed typically not. Sometimes there's an extra teacher. For
Yeah,
years we haven't had it. And it also depends on the student. So great question, because I left this part out, so thank you. The principals go and talk to all the teachers. And they say, this is what's happening. Are you comfortable with this? Are you okay with it? And that's why the teachers sign off on each one of them that they were aware and that conversation happened with them about the class. So in that case, I see, on the 4 I have here, I see all the teacher signatures, so that happened. If it didn't happen, that's, if the conversation, if I hear, yep, the union would come to me and say, hey, Doug, you're not getting the right information. They were very frustrated with what happened. We look at the same thing. We've had this question too with the number of special ed kids and any one teacher, and we try to balance that out or switch teachers in classes. Not that we're seeing any numbers, but the needs of the student, if you have a large class, like I one year had 24 kids, I had 23 kids that were special needs. That's a very taxing year because you have to diversify so much of your instruction. We try to blend that around. So that's another thing we look at and try to move around.
And just speaking to, largely my fellow board members and, the administration is, the one thing that, Keith and I and leadership are, a goal of ours and very important to us is that this board discussion, part of the agenda, becomes center to our meetings. And that it's a rich discussion and an important discussion, like Keith always is, like ask the right questions. A lot of the agenda is very, locked down and very, the consensus driven, but we've talked, to the superintendent, would, shorten your reports, control, presentations. We don't want just slideshows. And Keith and I have, so the challenge to the board members is, because we want to use this time to be the center of our meeting when we have these discussions and the questions come out. That's a goal of mine and a goal of Keith to kind of change that to make this, the hallmark of our meeting and the important part of the meeting and to ask those questions. So to that point, those 3 questions came up, thank you, because they were important and it allows us to have those discussions. And I just want to continue to grow this part of our meeting. I want to make our part bigger, the superintendent's part smaller, just so we can, have the discussion.
You're going to lead into the superintendent's report
now? Now it's the superintendent's report, and Doug said he'd have it in 45 seconds, so.
All right. We opened the school, we talked to people, lockdowns, fire drills are happening, and I'd like to thank the staff. To elaborate on those, the first one is open community communication, and right now I'm not tracking any open items at this time. The next item I have is opening day. Opening day, excuse me, how do I say this clearly? I want to say the day went absolutely fabulous, everything was great. That's always a little bit of a fallacy because there are always mistakes. I was sitting at Alma and there was a parent sitting there next to me and I said, hey, how you doing? Isn't your kid in the main campus now? He goes, yeah, he was supposed to get on bus 123 and got on bus 321. Okay, cool, had the right numbers, wrong order. So were there little hiccups around the place? Yes. In terms of comparison to other years at opening, it went very smoothly, and we are having the II open too with different parent drop-off, and I really got to thank the parents. Jane before the meeting says how she's reading all this stuff very thoroughly, and I want to say the parents must have read this stuff very thoroughly. They were going to the right place, picking the kids up at the right time, and that, I think, made a huge difference for everything of what the parents did, so thank you to them. Like I said, I was at the one primary for picking up there to see how it was going. I think I was at another one, my years kind of blend. I was out, I really spent most of my time though on the main campus, seeing how I wasn't on the drop-off for the first day, I was somewhere else. Other days I saw drop-offs, I saw pickups, where kids were going. There was one individual student did come to me and said, I was told to be on this bus, but I really think they're wrong, I should be on this bus. I did call. They were told the right bus, but I'm really proud of the student for checking and not just getting on a bus and waiting until they got to the end of the ride, which another student did do at another place. So that bus route was late for picking up a student at one of the bus was late getting back to Wales, but we did get everything taken care of. So thank you to the drivers, thank you to the parents especially, and thank you to the staff that took the time to get there. The II, we will be reviewing some of their processes. Why? Because we have a new principal and we have a new clerical person there. So, in fact, I had a conversation today where he will be asking the staff, how did it go? What could be done better so that we can improve for next year? Also did go talk to staff about it too. New lockdown, fire down drill notifications. Typically what we did is we just ran them and had them. We've been doing that for years and years and years. Right now, because the governor, the state feels that this could cause trauma to students, we will be notifying the community, the principals will be notifying their building community within a week of any lockdown or fire drill, so they know that it is happening. And we'll announce that it's a drill during the drill, so people know it's a drill. Recognitions, what I really want to recognize is the staff that was here during the summer. All the different areas, especially the people that opened the II. You know, the week before, I think it was in the 90s, and that's the push to get things done, and it was very, very taxing. It's just these last minute things that fall out in half. I still have one individual to catch up with too, just to see how it went for him. And they were taxed, but they rose to the occasion. They are such professionals and want to make it right every time. I can't begin to express how lucky we are to have the staff we have here. And then also recognize the teachers for the first day of taking that extra time with students, organizing them at the primary, at the main campus, to get people where they want to go, and the transportation people for being patient, because things do run late. I figure on the first day, if we're running 15 minutes late, we're on time. By the third week, we'd be running late. It just takes time for all the traffic, the parents. One of the bus drivers said, I drive by the kid, and the kid goes, yep, that's my house. So then they have to go around the block and let them off at their house, because that's where they identified it. But that's all I have, so thank you.
I think that although the bus app had a couple hiccups.
Oh, the bus app did have a couple hiccups.
I think, though, that that's a really huge improvement to what we had previously. So
Yeah.
I was texting Danny Bond in the garage to give her a test message. Be like, hey, Carson couldn't find his bus, but, you know, to make sure of it. But I think that was a huge upgrade to really understand where the buses are.
It's nice, and please, parents, use the bus app.
Okay, we're going to move to item 7, recognition of guests. We do not have any guests for agenda items at this point. So we will move to 8, discussion. It's discussion of agenda items 10.01 to 22.05. Discussion on the agenda. I know, Dave, you have...
Yep, just want to welcome Kathy Clark. She's joining us as a teacher aide out at Wales, so welcome her to Iroquois.
Is there any other discussion on agenda items?
I just have a question for 22.02 policies 2. Under that, we have a policy on, it's a new policy, second reading for AI, and in it, it gives us 2 options. When are we going to have the discussion on those options, or are we not choosing those options?
I think, you know, and I look to Nora for this one. When we send it out, I reviewed the policy, so I think it shows what they were doing. She would have to go off, and then it shows what I am recommending to the board with the option already in there. In the second one, it shouldn't, oh, I see the 2 usage.
See, I'm still seeing it
That should already have been
highlighted.
taken care of. Let me review that, and we'll have another second reading on it.
Okay.
It already had those discussions and had picked one, and I wouldn't be able to answer that right now on the spot, because I don't want to make a mistake.
See,
I
I'm
have to
really
review
good
that with
at-
Mary Jo, obviously, it's AI, and actually, I'm just going to pretend I listened to the presentation, which I did, Rich, I'm just teasing.
I'm really good at reading my packet, but I usually do it in the morning before the board meeting. I should have asked this question over the weekend.
No, I got to go through and recommend one of those.
Yeah, that's.
Yep, no,
that
thank
was-
you.
That's what I was wondering, like, are we choosing one, or is there a recommendation
No, I will
coming?
give you a recommendation.
Okay, all
I'm
right.
sorry that was a mistake.
Any other discussion on agenda items? Thank you, Jane.
Well, when joining the board, it's not like every single one of us, how many pages of policies are there? Like
Oh.
thousands? So
8,000?
it's very interesting to read when policies do change, to read them, to become even more familiar with them. And I did learn something I didn't know before, and I think it's great that the district does this, just about blood donations, that our staff can actually go to do blood donations and get time off of work twice a year. So I thought that was great. Even the cancer screening, the mothers that are nursing, like all that, I think that's great. I wasn't familiar with that policy before, so considering there's a blood shortage, I hope some teachers are listening and go out and donate some blood, because it's really important, so.
Absolutely. Especially the O's, I think, right?
what's
Oh,
that?
positive.
O positives.
Yeah, universal donor.
O positives.
It's O negative is the universal donor.
You O negative,
Or
sorry.
positive
Negative.
universal
I
recipient.
know, because I'm O negative. It's the universal donor. We should be giving constantly.
Do you think our staff realize that does anyone, just out of curiosity, like donate blood? Yeah? Oh, good.
Nora confirms.
No, Nora is speaking, yeah,
I think there were the cancer screening.
yeah.
Definitely the cancer,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, that's good.
With the consensus agenda, the basic purpose of the consent agenda is to act upon routine matters in an expeditious manner. Items placed on the consent agenda are determined by the board president and vice president in cooperation with the superintendent, and are those which are considered common to the operation of the district and normally require no special board discussion or debate. Board members have the ability and the responsibility of reviewing the consent agenda ahead of time. A board member may request that any item on the consent agenda be removed and inserted in an appropriate place on the regular agenda. So now we'll move on to requests to withdraw any item. Does that one need to be withdrawn that Jane
Withdraw
brought?
that one, yes.
Okay. What item is that?
22.02.
We'll just withdraw them both and then re-put it on next month.
Okay, so we are going to,
That's what we expect you to do.
Do I need to make that motion?
I'd rather not, no. Go ahead.
going in the other direction, do we need to add any items?
Well, we need to vote on.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well,
So I'll motion to remove 22.02 so it can be rewritten and
I'll second.
revised.
all in favor? So there are 6 in favor. It passes. Okay. Are there any to add to the agenda? Okay. Request to motion to approve the consent agenda, items 10.01 to 22.05 with the removal of 22.02. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, there are 6 in favor, none opposed. Okay, it passes. I gotta skip ahead here. Now we are moving to 23, recognition of guests on topics that are not on the agenda, and we do have one. Cindy Bendez would like to speak. Just so you know, you have about 3 minutes. I'll kind of count down for you when you're ready.
Can you let me know when you start the timer?
Yep. Well, when you're, let me just reset this. When you're ready, I'll start, so.
Okay. Thank you for your time. This is our voice. We are parents, we are staff, we are community members. This is our voice. A current online petition that reads the following is meant to share our voice. Dear Board of Education and Douglas Schofield, Superintendent of Iroquois Central School District, the community, teachers, staff, and parents have written, called, and spoken publicly about the vital role the Code of Conduct Officer position held by Andy Jacobs plays on the social-emotional well-being of our students and staff at Iroquois Middle School, and his tireless efforts to improve our school through his decades of service. On August 12th, our middle school principal spoke at a Board of Education meeting describing the critical need to maintain this leadership position to continue implementing urgent mental health interventions and restorative justice in our middle school. We, the undersigned, ask that the Iroquois School District reinstate this leadership position at our middle school held by Andy Jacobs, and negotiations take place to decide the appropriate FTE and benefits status to be mutually beneficial to both parties. I carry with me 692 signatures on 19 pages and associated comments that support this online petition. Some individuals' geolocation of their IP address populated their zip code, but you will see from their names they are district residents. I will now read aloud a sampling of some comments shared in the support of the individual who held the Code of Conduct Officer position. Andy has helped my children since they started in the middle school. He has been a huge source of guidance for them. He was one of the few people who understands my son's special needs. Andy constantly supports him and has helped him understand his emotions and reevaluate the situation. Without Andy, I don't know where my son would be. Andy Jacobs has helped my son get through the roughest times at school. I can't count the number of times he's been there and supported our kids. Coach Jacobs helped my son turn his attitude and choices around and took the most time out of any teacher there to build a relationship with him. He needs his continued guidance in this upcoming school year. He is always there for every student. And lastly, my dad passed away when I was 10 and my mom was left with 4 kids. Mr. Jacobs always went out of his way to check in on us. I'm at 2:33?
Yep.
25 years later, I can remember his kindness and the impact it had on me as a kid trying to navigate such a tremendous loss. I thank you for your time, and if you would like me to hand you, if I'm able to submit, I also do have the 692 signatures and comments that were associated with them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have a need for an executive session?
I don't.
Okay, neither do I. Like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? There was 6 in favor and none opposed. We are adjourned at 8:32.